So, what if I told you that the ultimate success, or the absolute failure, of a massive, multi-million-dollar clinical trial is determined long before a single patient is ever enrolled? It kind of sounds counterintuitive, right? I mean, we usually picture medical breakthroughs happening in a state-of-the-art lab or right at the patient's bedside. But the truth? The actual fate of clinical research is totally sealed during the planning phase.
Welcome to this explainer on protocol writing essentials. Today, we're going to look at the protocol not as some dry, annoying regulatory hurdle, but as the master architectural blueprint of a massive medical construction project. Think about it. Every successful skyscraper needs a flawless blueprint, and absolutely every successful clinical trial needs a meticulously crafted protocol.
All right, here is our roadmap for today. We're going to cover 1. The ultimate trial roadmap, 2. Anatomy of a strong protocol, 3. Safety and statistical planning, 4. Overcoming common writing challenges, and finally, 5. The bigger picture. Let's dive right in.
Section 1, the ultimate trial roadmap.
You know, it's incredibly easy to just write off documentation as boring administrative paperwork, but honestly, that is a huge misconception. A clinical trial protocol is literally the authoritative guide for every single member of the research team. From the lead investigator all the way down to the data analysts, everyone relies on this protocol to understand exactly what their responsibilities are. Plus, regulatory authorities and ethics committees rely on this exact same document to figure out if the proposed research is even scientifically justified to begin with. Because the real-world stakes here, they're incredibly high. When you have a carefully developed protocol, you're ensuring participant safety, maintaining scientific validity, standardizing procedures across all your sites, and drastically improving the quality of your data. But without one, you're running straight into a brick wall of delays, weird inconsistencies, and regulatory nightmares. A strong protocol minimizes deviations, a weak one pretty much guarantees them.
Section 2, anatomy of a strong protocol.
So, how do we actually build this thing? Well, there's a really strict, logical flow to these fundamental sections. It all kicks off with Step 1, study background and rationale, where you summarize the existing evidence and pinpoint the exact knowledge gap. That directly informs Step 2, defining the study objectives, so your primary, secondary, and exploratory goals. Those objectives then dictate Step 3, the study design, like are we randomizing, what's the blinding strategy, which finally leads us to Step 4, determining exactly who we need to answer these questions through participant eligibility. It's like a chain reaction. Each step seamlessly informs the next.
Take participant eligibility, for example. This is essentially a high-stakes quest for precision. Selecting the right participants isn't just about getting warm bodies through the door. It's about defining rigorous inclusion and exclusion criteria to make absolutely sure your science is valid. You've got to map out a highly specific recruitment strategy and strict screening procedures. Because if your study population doesn't perfectly align with your research objectives, well, your data is compromised from day one. Okay, so once you actually have the right participants, you need a flawless treatment plan. Investigators require precise, granular instructions. We're talking investigational product details, exact dose and administration schedules, rigid visit timelines, and really specific laboratory or imaging assessments. And this level of granular detail, it's non-negotiable. You have to maintain strict consistency across all study sites. If a site in New York and a site in Tokyo conduct the follow-up evaluations even slightly differently, you completely lose the ability to generate reliable, comparable data. Consistency here is everything.
Section 3, safety and statistical planning. Now, what happens if things go off script? Unexpected events happen, right? That's where safety monitoring and statistical considerations come into play. Picture these as two massive pillars holding up the exact same roof. On the human side, participant safety is always the highest priority. The protocol absolutely must outline how adverse events are reported, when a dose has to be modified, or the strict rules for just pulling the plug and discontinuing the study entirely. Then on the data side, the protocol doesn't just describe what data is collected, it explains exactly how it's going to be analyzed. We're talking sample size justification, how you'll handle missing data, and primary endpoint analysis. Early statistical planning paired with rigorous safety monitoring is what ultimately secures the scientific credibility of the whole operation.
Section 4. Overcoming common writing challenges. Look, even with all this structure, experienced medical writers still hit some pretty massive potholes during protocol development. When objectives are too broad, the whole study loses focus. If you write in complex procedures that unnecessarily increase the burden on your participants, they're just going to drop out. Inconsistent terminology, That causes huge confusion across global sites, and missing operational details always lead to protocol deviations. But honestly, perhaps the biggest deal breaker is poor alignment between the study objectives, the endpoints, and the statistical analysis. If those three aren't perfectly synchronized, your study simply won't produce valid results.
So, how do the experts actually solve this? Well, first, you always follow internationally accepted guidelines like ICH Good Clinical Practice. You've got to use clear, concise language and keep procedures genuinely practical for the real-world study sites. But the real secret weapon here? It's collaboration. Careful planning and multidisciplinary collaboration with clinicians, statisticians, regulatory experts, and operational teams during the development phase is what prevents unnecessary and incredibly costly protocol amendments later on. A protocol needs to be comprehensive, for sure, but it should never become unnecessarily complicated.
Section 5. The bigger picture. Ultimately, we have to zoom out and see how all this meticulous planning translates directly into actual medical progress. As our source material states, a clinical trial protocol serves as the foundation upon which an entire study is built. And that perfectly encapsulates everything we've talked about today. Thoughtful protocol writing improves communication among investigators. It dramatically strengthens regulatory confidence. It greatly enhances participant safety. Clear, sound writing literally creates the reliable clinical evidence that ends up changing patients' lives all around the world. It really is the bedrock of modern medicine. Which leaves us with one final thought to mull over. As clinical research becomes increasingly global, incredibly complex, and super technologically advanced, the ability to develop scientifically sound and operationally practical protocols is an absolutely essential skill for medical writers and regulatory professionals. But looking at the massive stakes here, as global trials grow more complex, are we investing enough in the foundation? It's something every single researcher and really everyone waiting on a medical breakthrough should be asking themselves. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep questioning the foundation.